Your journey has been an interesting one up to here. You've questioned so much more than those around you. You've even questioned yourself as to how you could have grown into these thoughts. Am I crazy? When did I begin to think differently? Why do people in general appear so limited in their thought process? Rest assured, you are not alone. The world is slowly waking up to what you already know inside, yet can't quite verbalize. Welcome to the Spiritual Dope Podcast, the show that answers the questions you never even knew to ask, but needed the answers to. Questions about you, this world, the people in it. Most importantly, how do I proceed now moving forward? We don't claim to have all the answers, but we sure do love living in the question. Time for another hit of Spiritual Dope with your host, Brandon Henley. Let's get right into today's episode.
Hey there, Spiritual Dope. We are on today with my good friend, Debbie Moran. And Debbie and I connected through a spirituality group that we're both members in. What's it? Soulside, right? Soulside
community. Yes.
Soulside community, with Mark Youngblood. For some of you who've listened to the podcast a couple times, you've heard Mark on the podcast. I've heard, I think I had Anna Champagne on the podcast as well. All members of this incredible group. Debbie's no exception, in this group. We're all in there just trying to learn how to improve. I don't know if it's improve, just how to harness our spirituality, better, throughout life. And Debbie has written a book that she's going to talk a little bit about with us today, that's going to help you to figure out, what are some practical applications and what are some ways that you can harness spirituality so that you can have some more fulfillment, some more happiness, confidence, let go of some anxiety, those types of things. So Debbie, thank you so much for being on today.
Hey, you're welcome, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always like to start these off with the idea that we are directly connected to source energy, like at all times, right? And it creates and speaks through us, right? We're vessels for this. And the idea is that there's somebody listening to this podcast today that is going to receive a message that can only be delivered through you at this precise time. What is that message?
I love that we're on the same page. I do believe not that we're connected to Source, but that we are an extension of Source. So we are here to embody us. So I feel like that actually is something that took me a long time to actually realize that I was here to embody Debbie Moran rather than I was going to change my name, and so many of us have changed our names in our spiritual circles. I realized through my process that a lot of the names that I was going to change my name to were simply the state that I was in my own evolution. For instance, bliss. So, what's the message? The message is we are here to be who we came to be.
What's that look like for you? If you wanted to elaborate a little bit more.
Well, each of us, I think you said it really nicely in the beginning. I don't feel like we're here to learn anything. I think we're here to remember the truth of who we are and the extent of what we're capable of, which is beyond our conscious level of awareness. So it's really about raising our states of awareness so that we can actually tap into and become that presence that is that clear vessel, that clear channel that doesn't, words are what we have to work with, but the truth is really beyond words. And so it's challenging sometimes to actually put an expression in terms of a language to all of the truth. And so I feel like what you said is true. In fact, a coach once told me, there are people in the world who can only hear what they need to hear through you. Which brought tears to my eyes.
Right. I mean, it's true, right? There's, I think we all resonate at a certain level to our different people. Right. And that's really the idea of the podcast is I may resonate with plenty of people, but you resonate with a different group. You're going to attract and you're going to speak to a different group of people that tune in, and they're going to hear your message. They're going to pick up on the Debbie vibe. Right. And you're going to maybe open up something inside of them. Right. I really like that idea though, too, what you were saying that you had considered changing your name because of these states that you were in and the idea of all these other people kind of that maybe you knew that have changed their name, that, they find the spirituality and then they go change their name, right? They live into this other state of being that they can flip in and out of at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm really glad to hear that what you decided to do, though, was just, understand that you were here to be, kind of who you were meant to be, and not like these other things, when you change your name like that, it's kind of like you're just changing your mask. Right.
Exactly.
Right. Right. So
and the mask is just our roles. So
right.
It is the roles we play, and they vary throughout life, but our presence never varies. So it just shines through different masks and different roles.
Right. Well, so let me what kind of got you into the spirituality space to begin with?
Well, I was kind of born into it.
Touche.
That was part of the dynamic, actually. It really wasn't meant as a that was really part of what made me, it was like coming full circle, rather full spiraling inward,
mm-hmm.
to this awareness that I came in sort of rejecting this life, rejecting the sense of being here. There was a part of me I literally came in with going, whoa, where am I? And this was pre-words. Where am I? And how did I get here? And none of this makes sense. And what is this language I'm hearing? And I couldn't say it, but all these thoughts were going through my head. And so it took me almost my lifetime up till now to actually be okay with, not only be okay, but recognize the brilliance and the blessing of being human and being born into the family I was born into. And into the experiences that I experienced, to help me to remember, to become aware of, this is not a punishment. This is
right. Well, I mean, I don't know about you. It's just another experience, the same way that we experience any other sensation. We're having this, I guess if we were to say it in one way, this is basically our life sensation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Our experience of, those things that if we truly are one, then I say that because I feel that and I believe that and I have a knowingness of that. However, we don't experience that full expression of that all the time, because otherwise we wouldn't be having these senses that we have, or these thoughts that come through, or these words that we're able to express. These are things that the theory is we came to experience what we are not, to remember who we are. And that's kind of...
Right. And, I think that's always, that's always a challenge, and you'll get like some eye rolls from people that haven't, I guess, experienced that space, right? That haven't kind of gone through some of those developments. And I think that, since it's such a subjective experience,
it is.
you can't really impart it on anybody else, right? You can just, all you can do is be like, well, okay, I mean, I can just tell you from what I've experienced and what I've gone through. And maybe these are some signals, right? Have you experienced this, that, or the other thing? Okay, then maybe, right?
Yes.
And I liken that experience to the idea of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, right?
Yes.
When you hear the call of the hero, like that's kind of like your wake up call, right? And you don't have to respond to it, but it's not gonna go away,
right?
Right? And it's kind of what you do after that, or each time it comes along, what do you do with it?
And it doesn't look the same for any individual,
right?
I work with a lot of people and a lot of families, and a lot of times one family member will come to me to actually work on another.
That's funny.
And I always bring them in first, especially
Right.
for the children or a spouse, because
Right.
it's like, it may look like the other person's not doing their work, but just because they're not doing it the same way you're doing it doesn't mean they're not doing their work.
That's right. Right. And that's a challenge. I mean, how was it for you to kind of overcome that idea, right? The idea of, well, that person's not doing the work. That person's not, I know they're not doing the work. And then like, you got to do it like this. You got to do it like that. And, because I bring that up because when some of my first experiences were similar to that until like there was like this point where I was like, wait a second, your experience is going to be totally different than mine. I don't know what your experience is going to be, but
Yes.
right. So where where did where did that come into sight for you?
Again, it's deepened through my whole process, but I really kind of came in with the ability to see a person's soul. That actually created problems for me a lot of times because I would see their soul and ignore their behavior. And I'm sure many people have had that experience. So it actually took me a long time to actually be aware that I could see their soul, but I needed to pay attention to their behavior. So it was like, in a way, I wasn't holding others accountable. I was holding myself accountable for the world around me. So it felt very heavy and very burdensome. And so I very early went to nature. Actually, I grew up Pentecostal, so I kind of grew into that indoctrination, which I
You grew up in where?
Pentecostal.
Okay.
Religion, Pentecostal.
That's right. Yeah.
Holy rollers.
Right. I think there's from what I've heard, I kind of think that there's a good grain of truth to that whole.
There is.
Yeah. Like I'm a fan.
It took me a lifetime journey to actually realize it.
Right.
As a matter of fact, Sunday was the day of Pentecost, and for the first time ever, I actually understood what that meant.
What is it? So what does that mean?
Pentecost is theoretically, it's the day, like 50 days, Pente meaning 50
okay.
days after the resurrection of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is it's also the Jewish day of harvest. And the
okay.
theory from the Bible perspective is it's a Jewish day of harvest, the 50 days after the resurrection of Christ. And all of the disciples came together, and all of a sudden they were all speaking in a language that no matter, it's funny, we started out with saying there are only those who can understand through you.
Right.
In this Pentecost, the theory is that the apostles spoke in the language that whoever they were speaking to could understand.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, right? I mean, I see.
Pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, right? If you can be in a place and no matter what, whoever you're speaking to understands you, and I think that's really, again, this space, right? Once you kind of get into this space, there's a little dance, right? And then you just kind of land on, yep, okay, cool. Then we're speaking the same language.
Yes.
Right. So it's real similar, I think, in that, right. And so I wouldn't take that literally. That's how I would see it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like this, symbolic and, or, allegoric kind of way. Mm-hmm. So very cool. No, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about the book that you've put out.
Okay. So here's a picture of it. And it's interesting. It's called True Love's Kiss and Keep It Simple, Sweetheart. So
there you go. Yeah.
It's like 2 books in one.
Sure.
And True Love's Kiss it came to me. It's interesting because I was doing a 90-day book writing course. I have like books written everywhere, but none of them ever actualized. And I was in the middle of writing a different book, and all of a sudden it got derailed after the 90 days. I was ready to start putting it into book form, and it's like, nope, that goes away. This is what you're writing. And these characters came through. These fictional names came through. And all of a sudden I was like, Genevieve, who's Genevieve? What is this? So then I had this, and I couldn't, and it was like spelling it. It wasn't even like the easiest names or names I would have chosen. So I started these voices, these names, these characters came through and started writing the story of a mother-daughter, like the birth of a daughter and the mother-daughter relationship, all the way through the first chapter of her life, from birth to 21. And so that's the first part, True Love's Kiss. It's this story told in fairy tale form of the perspective of a mother and daughter, of what happened in their lives. And what it does is it shows how patterns emerge, and how they're actually solidified and rigidified, and they become habits, and then how they're unconsciously repeated.
What would be an example of that out of the book, maybe?
Okay, so what I talked about earlier is being able to see an individual soul and ignoring their behavior. and then constantly just saying, okay, I'll forgive that behavior, but still not hold them accountable and go back and just kind of repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And so there was that. And then there's a dynamic around finances and money. So the consciousness here is about, what is love? What is this life I've come to live? And what is this money thing? What is this all about? Why do we need this? And why are people saying one thing and doing another, or not saying what they need? So it's story after story of just the pattern. And it was brilliant how the mother and the daughter were parallel, but you kind of got both of their perspectives.
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. So I guess, the inspiration came from, just basically these figures coming forth for you, right? Just kind of showing themselves.
They did show themselves, but the inspiration was, I don't know if it was a parallel life or what, but it was from my own life. Sure. Okay. No, that's great. That's great to know. And then, so, we do, I think you talked a little bit about the patterns, and then there was some more, I think, that talked about, the concept of belief systems. Oh, very much so.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit.
Belief systems, habits, patterns, they all are just another word for a way that we rigidify ourselves and limit ourselves and forget the brilliance or the divinity of the birth of ourselves.
How is it then, so as we forget, is there a way that you have come across or can think of that would prevent us from forgetting?
It's funny because I said this to Mark recently, and he's like, Debbie, everybody talks about that. The breath.
The breath?
The
breathing?
Breath. The breath. I mean, I have gone through an endless array of encyclopedias full of studies myself, and different masters and different philosophies and different religions and spiritual practices. And I put them all into action. And yet I feel like part of the message here is the remembrance of that simplicity of the breath. I mean, literally, the breath is the first thing we take when we come out of the womb.
Sure.
And they've done scientific studies that show that when a person dies, the breath, until that last breath is exhaled,
right,
that weighs 6 ounces from what I understand. It's like they measured the breath. That last exhale was 6 ounces, and that's like essentially your spirit.
Right.
So that's our life.
Did they get the 6 ounces? Yeah, I hadn't heard that. I hadn't heard that they nailed down a number. That's very interesting to hear.
I remember it that way. Don't quote me on that. I think I do remember 6 ounces.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if we could find. I'd love to know kind of where that came from.
I'll look it up and see.
Yeah, that'd be great if we could share that out, because again, I agree to the breath being this kind of a recall, right? If we've been breathing this certain way and we've been doing it incorrectly our entire lives, and that's the easiest and number one thing that we do, what else have we gotten wrong? Is my question. Right?
Because when you're not breathing freely, you're, first of all, the breath. If the breath is our life, I'm going to use a Bible quote here. And God breathed life into the nostrils of mankind.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
If we are not breathing, we are cutting off our connection to that source that is living through us, that is experiencing through us. And when we do that, we don't make good choices.
Fair enough. Would you be able to point to any breath exercises or breath work that have had an impact on you throughout your life?
Well, I've done so many. I've done Qigong and everything and done the yogic practices, but the simplest breath that I've come back to, hence the keep it simple, sweetheart. That's right. Is the breath of just in the nose, out the mouth, in the belly, out the belly. So, and it's just, and then gradually there's a Buddhist smile meditation. So they gradually, as you increase and bring the breath to, without mentally thinking about it, as you bring the breath into an even in and an even exhale,
Right.
then you gradually add a smile. And what that does is that increases the endorphins in your body
Nice.
and has your body start to produce those endorphins, those chemicals that actually do help you stay clear in your thinking and in your feeling and your physical body.
Right.
Help you make good choices.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think that when you're creating and I love the fact that we are these walking chemical factories,
We are.
right? And that we have the capability to generate whichever chemical we dictate that, right? You're talking about being able to go in and say, right now, this is what I need. I need to feel gratitude, and my body's going to respond and create these kinds of these endorphins, right?
Yes.
And so it's gonna send out like these kind of things that are making my entire body feel good. So knowing that you're this walking chemical factory, I think that's just another thing that along the path is very empowering.
It is. And when you get that, you recognize that you have everything you need.
Right.
And by breathing in and by the right chemicals being produced, what happens is you start seeing these seeming synchronistic events where suddenly the right resources, like you reach out to me and say, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?"
So I mean, I think the gist of your story really is that you've always felt like this connection to source, and you've always just kind of surround yourself by it. It was just a matter of how to really bring more of it into your life and be accepting of it in your life. Mm-hmm. And then kind of letting it play a greater part in your life where you're not here being, Debbie the human, you're here being Debbie the spiritual being having the human experience. Is that fair?
Now I am. Before I was rejecting being Debbie the human. I was like, I am not this. How did this happen?
That's funny. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Now, so I mean, I think that touches on a pretty key point too, because this whole experience is you,
yes,
right? And I think that it's really easy for people to reject their body in spirituality, right? In favor of spirituality. You want to talk a little bit about how you maybe merged those two pieces yourself?
Oh, yes. Well, part of the benefit of the way I came in with this kind of dynamic of rejecting was I became very physical. I was very athletic always. I always loved to dance and those kind of practices. And I just had this awareness as I was writing this book. Mm-hmm. It really helped me remember I was in a body. Mm-hmm. So it helped to keep me grounded. And so what occurred with that is I started realizing, and as I started accepting my role,
right,
rather than wanting to just go off onto a mountaintop somewhere to an island and just kind of living in peace, sure. I started accepting my role, and I began teaching something called body talk, and the body talk was a really big key factor for me in terms of that put me on my spiritual path in a way where things started integrating, and a structure was built within me to where I could actually tap into my intuition even more.
Right.
So I came to realize that too often through our spiritual and religious practices, we talk about transcending the body. And that in itself is a rejection. So I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like we greatly misunderstand our physical bodies. We are like these walking galaxies. And we greatly misunderstand the capability of them because we watch nature and assume that is the pathway of this body. So that's what we create. So it's really unlearning the indoctrination of that is the way of biology. Because biology, I feel like our bodies are literally evolving into these light bodies that can actually bring in more of our source energy so that we can actually fulfill an even greater, unimaginable way of being human.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. It's the idea of if we think about any type of conduit or anything that if we don't treat it properly. I'm thinking right now of of battery cables, right? And sometimes they get corroded, and if they, you know, you let all this corrosion come through, then the juice doesn't go through,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if we neglect our bodies and this thing, this is really what allows us to be like those conduits of, you know, divine energy,
Exactly.
right?
Of
And
love.
yeah, absolutely. So I love that. I love that. So before I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions, maybe like
Mm-hmm.
one. We'll start with one, see where it goes. Because basically the idea here, Deb, is that this is a spiritual speed dating show, right? Like, so there's going to be somebody on the other side that's like, you know what, I'm looking for my next spiritual date, and Deb, you may be it. So, but it's all going to hinge on what your answer to this question, and the question is going to be, let's figure. Oh man, what things?
I love this spiritual speed dating.
Spiritual speed dating. I said yesterday. What is your one wish for the world?
Oh, that we wake up and that we actually tap into the divine vessels that we're designed to be.
What would that look like?
Well, I've been saying multiple things about part of my role is to end history as we know it, and to awaken the remembrance that heaven never left Earth, and it's just right here as soon as we are able to open our eyes and be able to see it and experience it and be it.
Have you been able to have that experience yourself?
I feel like I have been, ironically, these last couple of years when the world is in turmoil. I mean, I feel all of that out there, but I had this blessed experience of being able to work at home. I do all remote work. And I was able to write this book during that time. And I live in a home with a partner who has a much different approach than I do, but he's conscious. and we hold ourselves accountable in this conscious relationship. So it's like we basically say, you know, I'm in charge of my consciousness and my awareness, and you're in charge of yours. And if either of us feels out of integrity with that, we're going to call the other on it, and ourselves. And I live in a home in Florida, Sarasota, one of the most. So many people are coming here, but I live in a home where we can open up all our doors and windows and be outside from the inside. So it's like living in the inside out, which is kind of a great metaphor for what I choose to do, living from the inside out, or as Mark would say, living from the soul side out.
For sure, for sure. Living from the soul side out. I love it. Let's have one more. We have time for another question. You know, you were talking about this as we started, kind of being present. So what does it mean to live in the present moment?
It means to breathe fully and allow space for your presence to come through, rather than having a preconceived idea of what that's supposed to be. And I find when I do that, it's like time slows down. The words come through me. It's not Debbie, the incarnate, speaking. It's God, the incarnate, speaking through Debbie. And so it's this ever evolving discovery of the wonders of what this life is all about.
That's great. So, I mean, it's being present to what is,
Being
right?
present to what is, because that's all there is.
Sure.
And you can, then another, just a simplistic description of that is too many people worry about the future.
Mm-hmm.
So it robs them of the moment. And there's so much beauty and grace in this world that's being missed. And as a consequence of that, not being given the grace, the glorious due that is there. If we were actually just to take that moment to consciously, we're never out of the moment. We just often think we are. to take that moment of breathing into that space. It's like the miracle of life shows through.
I think that's wonderful. And I agree. It's the idea of it's always present, right? Those moments that you're talking about, they're always available. Sometimes we get caught up in some other moments, some other thoughts, some worries, some concerns. And really, when we look back at those moments when we were worried and concerned, we're like, why did I expend so much time and energy in that space?
Yes.
So, and when this other thing was available to me, kind of whatever that was, but chances are, what you expended your time and energy on at that time, there was something better available for you at that time. Right. So agreed. And I think that, that's a brilliant point. That's not just because I agree, but so where can I send people to find more out about Debbie Moran and the book that you've got out?
Okay. I have a website, Body Talk and Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually put on the front page, there's a link where you can go buy the book from Amazon if you choose to. But you can go to bodytalkandbeyond.com. And on the front page, it can lead you to more information about me as far as the bio and everything, and also to the link to the book. Or you can just go to Amazon and look for True Love's Kiss by Debbie Moran. And it's love with an apostrophe S,
So, and where would somebody, if they want to get in contact with you, how could they do that?
They could get in contact through, there is a form on my Body Talk and Beyond website. Or they can just email me at debbie.moran.lol@gmail.com.
Debbie, thank you so much for being on today.
My pleasure, Brandon. Thank you.